All right, folks, I'm happy to have here Ken Pomeroy. You probably know him from his work changing the college basketball analytics game, the Ken Pom's rankings, synonymous with what goes on there. However, you might not know he's also a big curling fan as myself. He's started a website, doubletakeout.com, getting involved into the curling analytics games. Here to talk about the upcoming Olympics, talk about the fantasy curling that we have going on here. And just, it's every 4 years. It's a really exciting time to be a curling fan. And I know we're both excited. So first off, Ken, thanks for joining me. And how'd you really get involved in curling and kind of getting involved into the analytics side of things?
Thanks for having me on, AJ. I started playing about 8-9 years ago, and just kind of took up the sport as a middle-aged person who was seeing his body get abused by more physical sports like hockey and basketball, and curling was kind of a good sport to get into. So got into it then, and just naturally my mind is kind of analytic, thinking about the analytics of various situations and probabilities of things happening. And so, as I watch more and more curling, online or on TV, just questions popped into my head about certain things and how the game was played and which teams were good and things like that. And so kind of always wanted to start a curling analytics site. Always was super busy with basketball, but once the lockdown hit in 2020, that gave me like a lot of downtime to start to think about how to do this, and that's really what got the ball rolling and got me started in this.
Yeah, how does curling lend itself to analytics? Every single shot is tracked and scored and rated. Does it make it kind of easy to put it all into a one on one number kind of thing?
Well, there's some things that are challenges. Like, first of all, in most team sports, the teams are kind of a constant from year to year. Obviously, the personnel changes, but there's a lot of like common players to a team from year to year. And in curling, of course, the players make their own teams basically, and some of those teams persist over a period of years, but a lot of times they break up and new teams form. And so, kind of handling the new team issue is a serious challenge in rating teams. And then as far as like the shot making stuff and the shot data that's out there, like you said, like in the big events, you get some pretty decent data on what types of shots players are trying and how accurate they are, but it's still a ton of data and there's a lot of stuff missing. Like, you don't necessarily know, like, players are rated on how good their shot is relative to what they're trying, but you don't necessarily know like how difficult the shot is that they're trying, which is obviously a very important variable in assessing how good a player is. So there's some challenges there, and I'm just, I've been working on this for really the shot data probably for the last year, and I feel like I've just kind of scraped the surface of it. But hopefully, with the Olympics coming up here in a few days, I'll be motivated to dig into that a little bit more deeply.
Yeah, definitely. As you mentioned, Olympics right around the corner. The best time of the year to be a curling fan for sure. Want to get started into it. Starting off with last Olympic calendar's big story. John Schuster and the USA men's Olympics team. I think I remember you saying in an interview that you had them as dating back the equation as like a 3 to 4% chance to win. Were you able to compare that to any other surprising curling results? Where did that rank in in history there?
Yeah, so I don't have like a huge database of major events. I mean, I do remember I compared to some other events when I kind of first did this analysis a year ago or a year and a half ago, and it was right up there in terms of some of the most surprising outcomes. I changed the ratings a little bit since then. It was kind of the first iteration of my ratings, and I've changed them to be a little bit more accurate. I suspect like it wouldn't probably change much for that event because all those teams had a long track record, and no matter what rating system you use, you're probably going to come up with a very similar answer. But yeah, I mean, it does, I think, go to show that, just because you might look at a team's chance of winning an event and see 3 or 4% and say, oh, they have no chance, but they have a 3 or 4% chance. Like one out of every 25 cases like that, you'll see a team like that win. And sometimes there are multiple teams like that in an event. So it's even though it obviously was a huge upset and deserved all the press that it got along those lines, but still teams like that do win every once in a while. And so if you can just get yourself into an event with a something a decent chance, a 2, 3, 4% chance to win, like you shouldn't give up hope. You really do have a chance to win that event.
Taking a look at the men's slate this year, they kind of in recent worlds have been in, we're performing up to expectations, competing for medals and things like that, but nothing like 2018. Where do you see their chances heading into this year's event?
They're actually pretty similar. It's a very it's kind of an unusual situation because they, according to my ratings, they're actually a little bit better than they were 4 years ago. They were ranked in the mid-teens in my ratings 4 years ago. This year they come in ranked 11th. So you think on the surface, hey, they have an even better chance they did back then. But the problem is that the top of the field is a lot stronger. I have the 3 of the top 4 teams and 4 of the top 6 in this field, and that wasn't the case in 2018. And it's even worse than that because the top 2 teams in this field, Canada and Great Britain, are significantly stronger than kind of your normal top-rated curling team. So a lot of the probability goes towards those 2 teams, which kind of takes away from what's left for Team USA. So I still have them at about a 3 to 4% chance of winning this year. About a 38% chance of making the playoffs. So you might put their chance of getting a medal. There's a 14 playoff, so the chance of getting a medal might be something like 25% or something like that. So still a decent chance of medaling, which I think obviously for USA curling and our general lack of tradition would be a great outcome.
You mentioned that the top heaviness, obviously Canada up there. They have not performed at the world stage as you would expect a Team Canada to do. What do you see as their chances heading into this year and, kind of reversing that trend?
Yeah, I think their chances are pretty good. I mean, they got, Brad Gushue, his team in there, and they've clearly been the best team in curling over the past, in Canadian curling, at least over the past 4 years. They just really don't lose to weaker teams. They have I think 3 or 4 losses over the entire 4 years outside the top 25. So they're just, very consistent. And that's really the difference is, when you hear about maybe Canadian curling disappointing in the Olympics, a lot of times you can attribute that to the fact that they really have a wide open qualification process. And sometimes the best team doesn't get in. And we'll actually see that on the women's side this year. But on the men's side, the best team made it. And in this case, it's, really one of the best teams that probably Canada's fielded in the last, 15, 20 years. So even having said that, their chance of winning, I have about 37%, again, because there's another team out there in Great Britain that is just as good as them. And, you honestly, if you wanted to really prove who the best team in curling was in the world, you'd probably just have a 7-game series between those 2 teams, because I think those 2 teams have clearly proven they're head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah. Bruce Moat of Great Britain. The shot making in the Worlds last year was he played some flawless games as well. Is it where it is those clear 1-2, like you said, where you would be surprised to an extent if it wasn't maybe those 2 in the taking home the gold or in that championship game there?
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. You add up their probabilities of winning, and they totaled some to 73%. So basically a 1 in 4 chance of somebody else winning it, which is not nothing. It's still pretty significant. Nick Edin's still out there, and Team Sweden, and the one issue with them in my ratings, I guess, is that they typically tend to perform better on the world stage than they do in random bonspiels in Switzerland or something. So they might be a little bit underrated by my system, but I do think they're clearly the 3rd best team. But you certainly wouldn't be surprised to see them win it. They're perennial winners at the Worlds, and obviously we're silver medalists in 2018 at the Olympics. So they could be there. Switzerland with Peter de Cruz is the 6th ranked team in the world and the 4th best team in this field, and I have them at about 7%. So that's another team you'd kind of call, certainly an upset pick, but not an unreasonable one. They'll likely be in the playoff round and get a medal. So anything outside of those 4 teams would be a serious upset, but certainly Canada and Great Britain, I think, are the 2 clear favorites.
Yeah. You mentioned the Canadian women's side. Taking a look over at the women's field, I see in your rankings you have Team Canada Jennifer Jones at 8th most likely to win, which is a big surprise, just with Team Canada. But like you mentioned, it was a bit of an upset in the trials. Where do you see their chances in the Olympics here?
Yeah, I mean, you can already anticipate the storylines there of maybe Canada being a disappointment or something like that. But yeah, I mean, this is a clear case where, the open trials process for Canada is great. It's great entertainment and fun to watch, but obviously it produced kind of an upset winner this year. I mean, Jennifer Jones, well-known name in curling, but clearly the 4th best team, I think, in Canada, behind Homan and Fleury and Anderson. but she was able to win the trials and get the bid. But it just tells you how even more competitive the women's side is than the men's. Certainly it's always had more of international flavor in the last, at least 5 years or so. There's just more international teams towards the top of the rankings. And so the fourth best team on the men's side may not be, rated this low in a field like this, but on the women's side, things drop off pretty quick. And I just have heard about a 7.5% chance to win. So not nothing. And it's kind of telling, by the way, that like they're the eighth best team in the field, theoretically, 7.5% chance to win. On the men's side, the eighth best team has like a 0.2% chance to win, I think. So this field is definitely more even, more level, and it's just it's really wide open. So almost anybody that wins, it's going to be like unexpected, because the chances of any team winning in this event on the women's side are so low.
Yeah. Who do you have as some of the favorites here in the women's field this year?
So, kind of stunningly, I don't know if the odds makers will have it this way, but I do have Team Switzerland as the favorite, and, relatively significant. I mean, a 27% chance to win, which is, lower than the favorites on the men's side, but that's almost twice as much as Team Sweden, led by Anna Hasselberg, who I have at 14%. Also Team Great Britain at a 14% as well. And then Team Russia at 12%. So 4 teams with double-digit chances. I do kind of think I have Team Switzerland maybe a little bit overrated. 27% seems a little bit strong, but the bottom line is, like, no team on the women's side has really distinguished themselves this year. And this is also a product of the fact that, again, Fleury and Anderson didn't qualify from Canada. So they're the second and third ranked teams in the world. And, Fleury and Homan actually are, no, Fleury and Anderson, got that right. Sorry about that. Fleury and Anderson didn't qualify as a second and third ranked teams in the world. And then Homan as a seventh ranked team in the world didn't qualify either. So, that allows there to be maybe a little bit more of a gap between Tiernzoni and the rest of the field, but still wide open. Like, even when you look at Team Switzerland, their chance of making the playoffs is only 70%. So there's a 30% chance that, they don't even have a shot at getting a medal. So, I think the women's side is going to be like significantly more interesting to watch than the men's side.
Yeah, you mentioned the Vegas odds. The ones I found, I believe from Bovada, had Switzerland as with the fourth best odds at plus 700. What do you think accounts for that discrepancy between what Vegas is seeing and what you're seeing? Your top rated team, a team that has won the last 2 worlds.
Right. I think one of those challenges is that, Team Sweden, Anna Hasselborg, when the pandemic hit, they were like clearly the best women's team in the world. Like they were, on that level, almost on that level we're talking about with Brad Gushue or Breeze Moat on the men's side. And then the pandemic hit, kind of disrupted everything. They came back last year and really were not the same team. They struggled in a few events. And so, you think, if they get back to their peak form, like at their peak, their ceiling is probably higher than Team Switzerland. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So, I'm a little surprised Tiernzoni is listed as fourth, or Team Switzerland, but it certainly doesn't offend me if people think Team Sweden's the favorite. Like, I think, you look at maybe a longer term history of them, and, you'd have to say that's, the team to beat.
Yeah. Team Canada with the second best odds. So probably getting by on name recognition alone. So if you get one thing from this conversation, for the new legal sports bettors here in New York, don't put your money down on Team Canada for the women's Olympics field.
That's good advice. Yeah. That's the one thing about, when I first started diving into this and kind of looking at past like curling odds, it did seem like some of the odds in particular, even going back to the last Olympics, like I think, was it South Korea that, they ended up getting silver in the 2018 Olympics, and their odds were like 8th or 9th best or something like that heading into the event. So, and they really shouldn't have been. Like the team had performed very well coming into the Olympics. So very odd. So, so I wouldn't put too much trust in those Canadian odds.
Yeah. When you go to the middle of this women's field, is there a team that stands out as maybe a dark horse, a sleeper, or something like that?
Well, like I said, there's all sorts, like the top 8 are just, pretty even. Obviously, there's some difference between the best and the worst in that group, but they're very, very even. Personally, I mean, I want to see how Team USA does. Like they have kind of, they don't get a lot of publicity in international curling, I feel like, but when you look at the track record of the team led by Tabitha Peterson, especially since she basically took over skipping over the last, 2.5 years or so, or 1.5 years, I guess would be. They've been very, very good, a world-class team. They're not a top 5 team, but I do have them ranked 9th in the world and have them at an 8% chance to win, 41% chance to get into the playoffs. So, a real, legitimate chance of getting a medal there. And, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do on the international stage, because, I think they've proven over the past couple of years that, they can play with these top 10 teams. And really, you just, get a couple wins over the top of the field and in round robin play and kind of take care of business in the rest of those games. And you can get a playoff berth.
Yeah, USA bronze of the last Worlds. Judging based on what you said with the difference in the fields, if you had to, take a pick as to one of the two USA squads, just based on the field alone, you'd probably say the women's side to have better success this year.
Yeah, no question. Just because the top, there's just a vacancy at the top of the field. I mean, maybe Sweden, returns to form and looks like they did 4 years ago. And, we haven't talked much about Team Great Britain and Eve Muirhead, but they kind of experimented with their teams this year to get the best team, kind of an all-star team going to the Olympics. And the team they're sending was just outstanding this year. So, those two teams are very good. Team Switzerland's good, but there's nothing on the women's side like there is on the men's side in terms of the top of the field. And so that, that allows, Team Peterson to have a great chance against, anybody she plays against.
Yeah, and in terms of the mixed doubles, this is the second year of it being here at the Olympics. There's not a ton of data. There's not a lot of similarity. Like the Canadian team that they're sending, they just picked. They did not have an Olympic trials. How kind of unpredictable is that just as a whole, based on the newness and the variability there in mixed doubles?
Yeah, it's really tough. I dabbled in doing a rating system for mixed doubles when I first started, and quickly got out of that because it is a challenge. There's some teams that are obviously dedicated teams, mostly in Europe. We're starting to see more, a few more in Canada that have come up. But basically, you're seeing kind of European teams and kind of oddball countries get involved in the mixed doubles game, which is why it was part of why it was developed, is to get more countries involved. So that's a challenge. And, you have the teams mostly like in North America are just kind of these ad hoc teams that come together for random events or something like that. And obviously the Olympics drive some of that as well. But yeah, pretty difficult to come up with a rating system for that. You really have to do it kind of on an individual basis, and this person plays on a team, like what's their own rating. And then you can like pair up two people who have individual ratings and determine like how good they are. That's kind of the approach that needs to be used. So I don't have a lot of wisdom to dispense on mixed doubles. It does seem like, I assume the favorites would be Canada, obviously with Morris and Homan. Like it's two of the best curlers in the world coming together. You're probably going to have the best team, and obviously the track record from the last Olympics kind of justifies that. So I'd have to say they're probably a pretty strong favorite, maybe even a stronger favorite than anybody in the 4-person events would be. Yeah,
and then switching the attention to what we've created, kind of got going on here, fantasy curling. For those, you can read in the article down below. Basically, you get a group of friends, you pick a team. It's more of a pool than fantasy. 4 points for gold, 3 for silver, 2 for bronze, 1 for fourth. So for, I guess, some draft advice, we'll go this route. You get your first round pick. In my track record, and I will say this for anybody considering grabbing some friends and getting into curling, I've done this, I believe 6 years now. I have never won, and I care about this much more than anybody else that I have introduced this to. So it's wide open. With a first round pick, typically you need somebody who is a lock for a gold or a silver. It's with any fantasy sport, you can't miss. Is there a team that you would say has the best chance to not be a major disappointment here at the Olympics this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the safest bets are on the men's side with Canada and Great Britain. There's no real locks in curling. I mean, obviously, it's that's one of the things I kind of learned too. Kind of as an outsider watching this, you always see the same teams competing at the top, and you feel like, oh yeah, there's like never any upsets in curling. And like long term, like who the good teams are going to be. Like you look at the top 10 in my ratings from 4 years ago and compared to now, it's like they're almost all the same teams. Like once you're good at curling, you're good at curling. But in any individual event, like upsets can occur, and certainly the Olympic format kind of promotes that with a single elimination, 14 playoff. One bad game and you're not going to get gold. So there's no locks, but those two teams are relative to the rest of the field. I think clearly the top choices, and pick whichever country you want to root for. Basically, there's not much difference between those two teams, but I feel pretty confident that both of them should be able to medal in this event. Yeah,
and then maybe looking at your second round pick or your third round pick, a team that we'd like for a medal chance with maybe the biggest upside side to grab a gold, a surprising silver. Who would maybe some of your suggestions be there?
Yeah, I mean, I think then you just, the women's side is kind of flush with those kind of teams. You talked about the betting odds, and I'm guessing Team Switzerland on the women's side probably won't have quite the cachet that they do in my projections, but they might be undervalued a little bit. Obviously if you can get, Team Great Britain, they might be undervalued a little bit. Team Russia especially always seems to be undervalued in the odds I see for like the slams or the worlds or things like that. And they consistently perform pretty well. So if you can get Team Russia on the women's side, I got them as a 12% chance to win gold. So I think they're like a pretty good sleeper pick, I think, relative to public perception.
Yeah, Russia with 14 to 1 odds plus 1400, tied for 7th best. Clearly a discrepancy in your rankings. And then, taking a look at maybe a flyer, we've seen it certainly on the women's field in the past, your Japans, your South Koreas, teams that have, seemingly come out of nowhere, but have in recent years had some more track record. Is there a team on either side that could maybe make a run out of nowhere here?
Yeah, I mean, again, I guess I would just kind of focus on the women's side because it feels like the men's side is pretty hopeless. Maybe I'm overplaying that, but just seems like the top of the field there is very strong. But you could go back to Korea on the women's side. I mean, I think it's virtually the same team from 4 years ago with Yoon Jung Kim skipping that team. Have them ranked 10th in the world. They played some events in Canada this year, so they've clearly prepared for the Olympics in a way that maybe some other international teams did not, in terms of making the trip to North America and playing against some of the best teams. So I have them at 8.2% chance, an 8.2% chance to win, which is virtually tied for 6th in the field. But it doesn't sound like much, but again, the field's wide open, and given their track record in 18 getting a silver, I do think certainly they have the experience to get there. So that could be an interesting team to take kind of later in your draft.
Yeah, and then kind of look at the mixed doubles field. We talked about it's more of kind of an eye test, but you've got the unknowns, but at the same time, these top curlers at the top. Do you see an avenue for one of these maybe unknown teams to play well, or Canada and Great Britain? They've brought some heavy hitters. How would you kind of rate the middle class, the sleepers in the mixed doubles field?
Yeah, I would say I'd be pretty heavy on just picking the best curlers in general. I realize, there's teams out there Norway has kind of a, professional team that basically just focuses on doubles. And obviously you have to give them a chance, but it just seems like historically, you just put two great curlers together and they're going to perform very well. And that, kind of that long-term, team chemistry type of thing really doesn't play much of a role. So I'd still lean pretty heavily on Canada and Great Britain in that event.
Yeah, I remember watching Canada, the mixed doubles. It did kind of seem that way. They just kind of threw two people together, and it was, we have the best man, we have the best woman. We're going to kind of roll over the field here.
Yeah, they don't even necessarily know all the rules or anything. They're still kind of forgetting when they can take out their opponent's stones or things like that. But once they get all that straightened out, if you can throw draws, you're going to be really good in the Olympics. Throw draws and be able to read ice, you're going to be successful. And I think Team Canada and Team Great Britain, I don't want to rule them out either. They both have, 4 of the best players in terms of doing that.
Yeah. So, you've got the website Double Takeout. If you want to maybe kind of share what you've got going on there with, the analytics, win percentages, things like that, articles of that nature. Kind of what do you have going on there at the website if you want to plug it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's, basically the main thing is kind of team ratings for all the teams in the world and some results there, but also the predictions for upcoming events. So obviously the Olympics are going to be a great focus here in the next couple of weeks. And I'll have some written material on the Olympics. I already have something up there forecasting the 2026 Olympics, AJ. Never too soon to do that, but we'll get to the 2022 Olympics here in the next few days. So hopefully people will stop by and check that out. Yeah,
definitely. Well, we appreciate your time. I know we'll both be looking forward to watching curling. I hope that other people enjoy it just as much as us. And, it's always a fun time to see Twitter fascinate itself with curling every 4 years. It always happens. So I'm sure we'll both enjoy this year's Olympics as well.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you very much. Thanks.